Welcome back to another ET Talk. Here we are, we're back in the Union Underground studio. Today we're going to do something a little different. The last few weeks we've talked about AI really deeply. We talked about accessibility. I think we had a great conversation with two of our students over the last couple weeks. But I sort of wanted to flip the script today, and I wanted to invite my colleague Graham Chapman, and I'll let Graham introduce himself, but just to give everybody a little bit of background, Graham and his team oversee our entire enterprise platforms area. So that is everything from Workday HR to define our mainframe financial system, our mainframe student system, and everything that lives in between that. I mean, everything. And Graham and his team somehow lock that down and keep the business of the university running. So I'd just like to say, welcome, Graham. It's nice to see you, man.
Thanks, Cole.
Yeah, so you've been at the university, what, like 6 months now?
I got my undergrad here in the mid-90s, and I've been working here since 2000.
Yeah, but you did something interesting as an undergrad. You were Plan 2, right?
I did Plan 2 and philosophy and a minor in history.
So talk a little bit about Plan 2 at the University of Texas and what that really means.
So Plan 2 is a small interdisciplinary honors program in liberal arts. And that had two big benefits for me. One, there was a sense of place. I graduated from a high school that had 118 students in its graduating class.
Yeah.
UT is an amazing place for, having so many opportunities, but it was a little overwhelming at the size and scale that
Yeah, I
it was.
bet.
And so Plan 2 created a little space where people knew my name and I knew their names. And
So you had a real cohort.
yeah, cohort and sense of belonging and, people looking out for me and so on. And I love the interdisciplinary approach there. I mean, I tend to sit at the intersection of a lot of domains.
Yeah.
And so that was just a way of looking across lots of different fields and looking for harmonies and, working with just incredible professors and really bright other students. And it, just stretched me in ways that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, my son, my son Max is a freshman here. He's in liberal arts honors, not the Plan 2.
Yeah.
But he has a similar kind of a feeling where he has
Yeah.
a cohort.
Yep.
And his high school was bigger, but I don't think much bigger. Maybe
Yeah.
he had 300 in his graduating
Yeah.
class. UT is a really big place.
Yes.
Where did you go to high school? Like, was it in Texas, or were you a transplant?
I was a transplant.
Yeah.
I went to high school at Albuquerque Academy in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So private school. My dad was a teacher and administrator, eventually assistant headmaster, and
Nice.
So I grew up in private school as a faculty brat before that, and so that was a much different size and scale. And
So you've grown up almost your whole life. Most of your story arc has been connected to education in one way or another. Either
That's right.
growing up in a home
Yep.
with parents, very similar to my background. Both my parents were,
Yeah.
My dad was a professor, my mom was an administrator.
Yep.
So I think, at least for me, it's interesting, like growing up around the academy and the periphery of the academy. Like the people that came over to our house were my parents' colleagues.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so I don't know about you, but I'd like to hear your opinion. I grew up having to learn the vocabulary of just social interaction with people in the academy.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
have the same?
Yeah, the same. And I was an only child and, probably felt more comfortable with adults
Yeah.
than with kids my age. And so very much kind of had to learn, as you say, the language of the academy.
Has that been like something you've leaned on as you've gone through your career at the university, like really sort of understanding the ins and outs of the politics and how things actually function?
I would say yes. Partly. I also just find those things fascinating. I mean, within things like Plan 2, and later I came back here for a master's degree in human dimensions of organization, and I love understanding decision making from both an academic and a practical perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I like seeing how small groups work. A lot of my college summer jobs were leading outdoor trips and seeing people out of their comfort zone working together to overcome challenges and so on. And so yeah, certainly, especially in my time working here, like the technology is just kind of the backdrop for how are we enabling groups of people to do things,
Yeah.
including things that they may not understand they want to do or be afraid to do or whatever.
I like that idea of being afraid to do.
Yeah.
Right. I find that a lot of our work is about giving the community courage to try new things.
Yeah.
Like safe spaces to make mistakes.
Yeah.
It's different, like my kids will click the OK or cancel button before there's any chance to read the modal dialogue. A lot of our audiences are the opposite.
Yeah.
They'll toil over the modal dialogues, right?
That's
And
right.
they'll be think, oh, if
Yeah.
I click OK, some really bad stuff's going to happen. But if I click cancel, oh my God, what something worse is even going to happen. So I do think that part of our job is to sort of lower that temperature
Yeah.
and give people the ability to explore and ask questions. Are you finding right now that the pace of change is accelerating in ways that you haven't experienced in the past, or do you think that this is just another wave that we're looking at?
I think the pace. I both think that there's enormous hype on the current set of disruptions, and also that the pace is accelerating. The interconnectedness and level of complexity is increasing, rapidly.
Yeah.
I mean, everything is growing more complicated faster and faster, and somewhere in here, I mean, just at a macro level, we're sort of moving beyond like individual expertise into collective knowledge and collective expertise.
Interesting. And so in your space, and maybe we should like just talk for a minute about what it is your team really does and how you guys think about what you do, because you have a really interesting team, and it's taken me, I've been here 2 years, and it's taken me a better part of that to really understand sort of the bimodal activities that you guys have to participate in, because we have really modern environments. Like everything after, say, 2015 is probably mostly software as a service or something like that. But then we have, significant investment in legacy technologies, and both of those operate differently.
That's right. So as you said, up top, we run most of the core enterprise scale systems supporting the university for things like HR and finance and student and faculty and so on. Lots of those systems, historically, we invested really heavily in homegrown talent. We
Yeah.
were trying to compete differently. We didn't want to compete directly with the market. And so we also leaned really heavily historically on non-computer science majors. We hired people that had already established themselves some other way. They were seeking a second career, or they thought they were going to land in the academy and then pivoted at the last minute,
Yeah.
but wanted to stay connected to a university. So folks that had really well established themselves professionally, and we gave them an aptitude test to make sure that they could, kind of hang.
Sort of like Google before Google.
Sort of.
Yeah.
And, slightly different entrance
Interesting
criteria.
though, but yeah. And exit criteria.
Yeah. And ran them through a 6-month software developer training program. That's how I came into this line of work. And then sort of an 18-month apprenticeship. In many cases, we co-located folks with the business offices. So originally, of course, we had central groups that would build the backbone, but we especially built partnerships with business from the get-go and embedded people all over the place, whether it was the libraries or the registrar or the CFO or whatever. And so this became the crowd that was not only doing programming, but doing sort of process design, analytical work, just sort of a lot of the, where do we go from here?
Right.
And we, many years ago, we were the place that people came to visit to see, like, how do you do this? I
Right.
mean, we hear about Apple Academy and so on. So, I mean, we had our version of, how do you, A, compete differently with the market in staffing, but B, compete differently with the market in terms of creating things that meet your needs.
Right.
And so for a period, things like Define, which is our homegrown finance system, and our various student components were just really, really well tailored to our needs. I would say over time that's become less true. Our needs have changed.
Interesting.
And, at this point, the assumptions that we built into some of those systems no longer hold, and then become shackles when...
Well, those systems were originally conceived when much of the business of the university still existed on paper, I'm guessing.
Exactly. And in many cases, the point was digitize this paper process.
Right.
And so it's sort of interesting to see how you inadvertently carry forward metaphors that are no longer productive. So, we still have document metaphors embedded throughout, which we see in other vendor products as well. So all of that was to say, a very good portion of my team, I've got about 140 folks on my team, a good portion of them come from that background. So full full stack software developers and engineers who partner really closely with the business. A lot of them are generalists. Of course, we've got specialists, more engineering, more BA, more PM, but lots of folks who are very oriented on how do we meet a business need? We can do anything to make it happen. As you say, for the last sort of 15 years, we also have added lots of vendor systems into the portfolio. Yep. And all of the experiences are interesting. And in every case, we're trying to stitch all the data together and make the processes sort of as sane as possible so that things interoperate well. And, one of the big questions has been sort of who cares where you store your data, like expose it where you need to and interoperate where you need to. And so, as you say, we've got some folks doing, very progressive cutting edge work in a technology sense, and some folks doing, sort of arcane work in a technology sense, but all of it is organized around how do we meet the mission and business needs.
So the underpinnings, regardless of sort of the technology stack, the practice. Like, I think about what you guys have built here over 40 years, and I think, it's not just the factory where you build the stuff or the warehouse where you store the things, it's the talent pipeline, right? It's the continuous improvement, and it's the thought that the business wins out.
Yes.
And I'm wondering what you're seeing in the marketplace now. So when a community is given everything that they want from a process perspective, a technology perspective, and we can cater through customizations, it also creates a different kind of expectation and culture from the businesses as well.
That's right.
How do you see this campus adjusting to the reality that if we pivoted from Define into a software as a service package, Oracle, Workday, SAP, whichever one you choose, how does the community deal with the fact that all of a sudden, no, out of the box, this only takes 2 clicks and everything's processed. You don't route it through 19 people. There aren't 28 touches. I'm curious, like, how hard do you believe it is to break that?
I think there are a variety of challenges embedded in that.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges is if you don't go through some sort of disruptive transformation every so often being 15 or 20 years or something like that, the change muscles can atrophy. And so, if you don't have enough experience of disruptive change, it can be hard for folks to understand what that means.
Yeah.
Our ability to customize to the nth degree means that we've probably over-tailored some solutions. And especially at UT Austin, we've got a pretty federated campus. We've got a lot of local optimization. And, from a macro perspective, over-customization, too much complexity. A lot of times...
So it's not just in the center. It's at the edge
everywhere.
as well. Yeah.
And that... sort of the long tail, the collective need challenges us whenever we do want to make change more rapidly. So, so one of the things that happens when we do a system modernization is essentially we buy some discipline. We're actually buying less capability.
Interesting.
In terms of perfectly tailoring every need that we understand today. We're buying more adaptability in terms of our ability to rapidly evolve over time to changing needs. And it's interesting because sometimes there's let's call it a language behavior mismatch.
Yeah.
So we celebrate the idea of agility while actually steadily investing in extreme tailoring.
Yeah.
And we've seen this with vendors. Microsoft at some point got so invested in Windows customizations that they sort of had to declare bankruptcy on that as they did a next generation. We're in a similar position where we need to factor in the sort of needs over time dimension as we're considering like how we meet university capabilities. And so, as you say, the 2-click solution implies that we've been willing to negotiate a simpler, more standard approach to meeting needs.
And that's what you mean by buying discipline.
In exchange for then when needs change, whether of our own strategic making or because, a federal or state compliance rule has changed or whatever, it becomes ever so much easier to adapt to that. And so right now, changes that would probably strike our stakeholders as routine require pretty extraordinary efforts to, not just enact in systems that are a little bit fragile, but especially to coordinate across lots of different folks that need to actively participate.
Yeah, like everything, it's truly because there are so many bespoke solutions, the inventory, the application inventory and the process inventory is so much larger and more entangled.
Exactly.
It's really, really something. I love that idea of buying discipline and not capability. I'm going to use that.
Yeah. Well, and it's a different sort of capability. The capability, the positioning ourselves to be able to be more flexible and nimble. Because if we know anything, it's that we don't understand exactly how we'll want to optimize in a few years.
That's right, because we've seen, you've mentioned the word disruption. We've seen disruption in the delivery of education throughout the last 15, 20 years,
Yep.
like a lot of online courses that changes a lot of things. But what people don't realize is behind the scenes, a lot of times universities try to maximize their revenue
Yep.
through introduction of like intersessions or
Yeah.
short courses and all of these things that a mainframe environment that we've hard coded for, what do we call them, long semesters
That's right.
and
Yep.
short semesters, it makes it difficult for a provost or a dean to say, hey, we're launching a 6-week
Yeah.
certificate program because it takes us longer in the back end to re-engineer
Yeah.
how all of the processes work.
Yeah, and even just the very basic things like payment deadlines
Right.
aren't as flexible as those things imply. And beyond that, also, for years, we've been investing in interdisciplinary programs, which are, of course, near and dear to
Yeah.
my heart. And, thinking about bridging disciplines. And behind the scenes, our information architecture says there can be only one decider and holder of revenue.
Right. Right. Like somebody has to be 51%.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. But you came to this recently. You've been here for a long time, but your portfolio up until 2 years ago was really focused on the academic
Yep.
technology pipeline. And one of the things that we did when I got here was try to bring this multi-organization beast, like this four-headed dog that we sort of inherited, together into something. And you took over the finance and the operations side of the house as well. And how has that gone? Like broadening your playing field, having to pick your head up a little bit higher on the horizon.
Well, it's been interesting. So partly over my time at UT, I've worked in a lot of different domains. So I had covered most of those before and had at least some familiarity. I'm a big proponent of organizing around end user experience, and a lot of our approaches on campus have been a little provider centric, and sort of business processes and systems sort of conceived as though they begin and end with a single department or a single VP or whatever. And in fact, most of our work is entangled, as you said before. So many of these things would flow, whether it's we think about building a new building. So of course we're working with our chief operating officer portfolio, but of course thinking about finance,
Right.
thinking about classroom revenue and all the rest of it, or faculty that span domains.
Or people in the commercial real estate group and obviously
Yeah.
legal affairs. I mean, it's crazy.
And so bringing these different teams together, partly they're all the normal growing pains of taking really high performing teams with distinctive cultures and trying to meld something common. We're still working through some of that. But partly they're just these incredible opportunities to work at an enterprise scale in a way that everybody has been cooperative throughout, for years. But it's a different relationship with the work. It's a different relationship with varied stakeholders and varied needs.
I'm curious, and if you disagree, you're free to. But my hope is over a period of time that the fact that we've been able to bring these groups together will unlock greater value and greater productivity. Not productivity, I don't want to say it that way because I'm not talking about the productivity of our team. I'm talking about the campus-wide efficiency and growth because things are less balkanized.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's. I mean, everything is a trade-off. So, I mean, I'll start by saying, in my experience at UT, I have worked in IT groups that have been department scale, portfolio scale, by which I mean sort of
Yeah,
a business VP, central. They all have pros and cons. Uh, the we have so much more collective capability having come together in this central form. There's something called Conway's Law, which I will oversimplify as saying inevitably technology groups produce software that mirrors their organizational
yeah,
structure and understanding, and we can see that. You
yeah.
know, across lots of these organizations, we have all these great shared utilities that are shared at particular in-group
That's
scales,
right.
even though the particular thing would be useful all over the place. So, I mean, if nothing else, there are just opportunities to learn from each other and collaborate across boundaries that seemed hard before. And back to the interdisciplinary approach, a lot of creativity and innovation just comes from far field examples. Did you
Hmm.
think about it this way? We do it this way over here. And
Right.
so we've got ever so many more opportunities to do that.
And I think over time, this is the experiment we've been running for 18 months,
Yeah.
getting this thing together. I'm beginning to see those things,
Yeah.
at least from like the 30,000 foot level. Like
Yeah.
I don't see down in the true what
Yeah.
this person and this person are actually sharing, but I'm beginning to feel evidence of it.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing more energy
Yeah.
emerging, which I really like.
I think the interesting consideration in this configuration, and it's less about bringing those two groups together and more they used to be embedded in the CFO and the
That's
provost
right.
respectively, and now everything is embedded in your portfolio. In terms of trade-offs, that's fantastic for bringing these groups into harmony. And then we have to be more vigilant about maintaining, relationships and strategic partnerships with the business areas because
Yeah.
some of those things that used to be more self-managing now require conscious attention.
Well, yes, because a lot of the things that you learn by walking around,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Just change and challenge what you do. So I think we're going to be probably introducing to our VP colleagues some new ways of potentially organizing ourselves to
Yeah.
better meet their needs, because we also have built this engagement organization where we want to have business relationship management embedded
Yep.
to work hand in hand with the teams assigned to those various VPs.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because you have an organizational design background. I do too, and there are only so many ways you can really push and pull these things.
That's right.
But I find that once you have the momentum and it gets 2 or 3 layers down, it becomes behavior,
Yep.
right? Like right now, it's we're learning how to behave this way,
Yeah.
and has not translated into activity and behavior. So,
Yeah.
then we have real disruption, and we throw the AI powder
Yeah.
keg on top of our entire team's lives.
That's right.
And for the past year, some people have been kicking the tires.
Yeah.
I've felt over the last maybe 3 months like almost the crest of the wave
Yeah.
is starting in the organization.
Yeah.
You're seeing it in enterprise platforms now.
I am. Yeah. And we're using it, partly directly for coding purposes, partly for just work augmentation purposes
Right.
generally. And one of the interesting considerations, any of these periods of intense disruption maybe make it easier for us to become aware of and interrogate what otherwise would have been unquestioned assumptions. Sometimes, the fish doesn't
Yeah.
know it's in water.
Right.
And so my group in particular is very steeped in building durable systems.
Right.
I mean, these systems that have been around for 50 years, well, yeah, they have, because we build things to last.
To last, yeah.
And it's interesting because we're in a period where things are changing rapidly, and there are trade-offs with all of this. And sometimes we need to be better at pivoting quickly and experimenting and trying things. And so AI is disruptive partly in terms of the sort of superpower capabilities that it gives people, but partly because it probably helps expose that we need to devote a little more attention to experimentation.
Yeah.
and I'll call it non-enterprise grade solutions, not as the final product,
Exactly.
but as the stepping stone.
Yeah, and that's where I'm discovering more of the value. And, I've watched you recently sort of jump on the Claude bus a little bit and
Yeah.
start to unravel like what I've been
Yeah.
going crazy about. Like it doesn't do my job, obviously, but you use the word augmentation.
Yeah.
It's making me move quicker, and
Yeah.
I get to decision points quicker.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to read, 5 contracts and pull out what each of them are offering, especially when you're dealing with like tokens and credits and
Yeah.
different cost structures.
Yeah.
AI can just pull that together for
Yeah.
us. And we're getting ready, you and I are getting ready to do our first shared Claude project.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
I think
Should
is
be fun.
pretty exciting.
Yeah.
But that's where the original concept of we wanted an AI platform
Yeah.
so that as we build things, they're shareable.
Yeah.
And you said something really interesting that I want to tunnel in on a little bit, and that is we need to be, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but we need to be more agile on the way to the durable solution,
Yeah.
but be willing to take micro steps there.
Yeah.
And I got really deep into Claude Code last night
Yeah.
for the first time. I've been using Codex to try to teach myself all of that. And I'm blown away that I can build what I can build through just understanding information architecture, understanding usability,
Yeah.
maybe some of my more ethereal skills,
Yeah.
right, of being in the IT universe for this long and being at the front edge of web development and the birth of the internet. Like you and I both can look at something and say that works or it doesn't work.
Yep.
I'm finding Claude Code allows me to be the developer I never really was.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's also interesting. This is an adjacent example. I was reflecting. One of the immediate powers of some of these tools is to help us just better understand what we already have on our hands, produce better documentation than we might already have. We lean pretty heavily on institutional knowledge, which sometimes is stuck in people's heads. But especially in this case, I was thinking a lot of our documentation has been biased toward the really nitty-gritty procedural documentation. If you're an expert, if you're the developer maintaining the system, or if you're the business user who lives in the system day in, day out, have we got the documentation for you? But we're really light often on high-level explainers. How do you think about this domain? What are a couple useful metaphors? Just
Well, it also goes back to your idea that you build for your audience.
yeah,
So even in the support realm,
yes,
we're built not for your audience, for yourself,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Because you project yourself as the audience.
exactly. And so
Yeah.
part of what I'm finding fascinating in the moment is take all this stuff that, again, was built with a set of assumptions that were sort of useful but incomplete, and say, now repackage this for this audience
Right.
with this level of detail, because we know the stuff, but we haven't necessarily been able to put ourselves in other people's shoes as well as we might. And so it's just
Yeah.
incredible to say, sort of rework some of this stuff to serve other purposes. It's really powerful.
It's a multiplier.
Yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, the way higher ed budgets usually work, like our budget is 97% spent
Yep.
on September 1st when our fiscal year rolls around.
Yep.
And that's also representative of our people's time.
Yep.
That our people's time is basically 97% filled with just technical debt, maintenance,
Yep.
day to day. So there's no room to expand the portfolio to meet those other audiences.
Yeah.
And nobody out there has picked up that task. And then the ones that have are doing it in Department A,
Yeah.
Department G,
Yeah.
Department F, right? Like, and those aren't being shared.
Yes.
So,
Well, and you mentioned technical debt. I mean, we can get in a situation where we are overwhelmed by busy work, which then compromises my team's ability to actually spend enough time learning and experimenting, which is a vital part of doing this job. And so clawing back some of this time, it's not just, sort of a productivity improver in the
No.
obvious sense. It is especially valuable because it's buying time for people to get out of just, I'm in short-term delivery mode.
that's it. Like if I can offset 2 hours worth of
Yep.
routine stuff, what I would hope we would be able to do is then provide people the space and the courage and the tools to experiment to get better.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I think that's the next challenge as we
Yep.
start to see, and it is a bit of a chicken and an egg, right? Until you
Yeah.
actually understand, because you're seeing now with Claude,
Yep.
it's not a one prompt and you're done.
Right.
You have to talk through this.
Yep.
And I read a really interesting article the other day talking about if you're over 50, you're perfect for the AI moment right now because you have the experience necessary to unlock the computational power
Yeah.
through your discourse
Yeah.
with the chatbot. Right?
That's interesting.
Like you and I have an ability because of our learned experience, the
Yeah.
context we've worked in, to be able to describe to an agent a more desirable outcome
Yeah.
with also an understanding of how like the back end should work,
Yeah.
but not being able to sit down and actually write the C++ or the whatever the code, the Python or whatever the code is
Yeah.
that you're, but to be able to describe both the interaction on the front end and the back end
Yeah.
is, I think, is an interesting differentiator in who may come out on top of this
Yeah.
short-term AI wave.
And there are lots of interesting, important questions about what are some of the long-term impacts here. I mean, how do people develop the critical thinking skills to be effective at using these things if they aren't forced to?
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I got my first Mac for my, I guess it was my 13th birthday, Mac 128.
Yeah.
You know, March of 1984. I guess that was my 12th birthday. If I wouldn't have had those formative experiences of being forced to learn BASIC,
Yeah.
then learn Logo,
Yeah.
right? I would have never been able to easily pick up HTML or
Yeah.
JavaScript. Like, if you don't have those formative experiences, I wonder what a full stack developer in the future looks like.
Agreed. And, of course, you want to work at a productive level of abstraction, but it's vital that you understand what's going on because inevitably things go wrong, at which point you need to actually have deep causal understanding.
That's right.
I was reflecting on this the other day. You and I both drive cars that have so-called full self-driving capability.
Mine does have full self-driving. And
Yeah.
yours does too, right? You can press the button.
Yes.
Yes.
We could quibble about levels of autonomy, but
Okay.
but I learned how to drive on a stick shift, and
Me too.
that's been important over
At
time.
about age 13.
Yeah, same. and and I was just reading an article the other day about some parents bought their teenage driver a car with fancy capabilities, which sort of thinking that they were helping with safety, and like that's a little bit of a crutch. You need to understand some of the fundamental systems, and I think we've got these same questions in general. As things progress, kind of necessarily, none of us can be expert in all the things all the time, and you work at a productive level of abstraction. But sometimes, as there is sufficient progress, we also lose some of the underlying skills, and in this case, some of those skills are about thinking.
They are. I mean, my kids struggle with answering the telephone. I mean, you remember being like K through 4 or so. Those were things we learned.
Yeah.
We learned greetings. We learned how to.
Yeah.
Now I sound like this old, like ancient guy, but
Miss Manners.
But the reality is like they don't have the same kind of pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Hello, the
Yes.
Camplese residence.
Yes.
May I ask who's calling?
Yes.
Remember all that stuff?
I do. Yeah.
And all that is just sort of gone.
Yeah.
But Graham, this has been just a great discussion. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming and sharing your experiences with us. I believe that we are an incredibly intelligent organization as a collective. And I think when we have the opportunity to express our collective intelligence, it leads to greater outcomes for our own team, but for campus. So thanks for coming and sharing your expertise today.
Thanks for having me, and I couldn't agree more
Yeah.
vehemently with what you just said.
Yeah, so we got to get some more of the team
There you go.
to put on their big kid pants and come and sit in the hot chair there. You can tell them it's not so bad.
I can.
Yeah. All right. For ET Talk, I'm Cole Camplese with my good friend Graham Chapman. So we will talk to you on the other side. Take care, everyone.